Still watching Breakfast Extra. Now, still on the growing national concern and how insecurity is disrupting education across Nigeria. Of course, with the repeated attacks, kidnappings, and rising tensions, several states have now shut down schools entirely. Now, while the closures are meant to protect students, they raise a much deeper question, which is what happens when learning is paused indefinitely?
And beyond safety, there's also the reality that millions of children are now at home with no structured learning plan. So, are there alternative education systems prepared? And do we have the infrastructure for remote learning? And another one is, how long can Nigeria afford these disruptions before the long-term consequences begin to show? And so to help us unpack these challenges and understand what lies ahead for the education sector, we're joined by an education consultant, Ijeoma Uwakwe-Okoronkwo. Ijeoma, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Much ado about the closure. Everyone has said it's important that the schools are closed so the children are safe, but we're not hearing from the policymakers about, the curricula or what it means, the impact for the children. So from an education standpoint, you being a consultant in education, what is the most immediate impact of prolonged school closures we're going to see on the children, on the students?
I'd like to thank you for even having me, but first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to all the men and women in the forefront of this. And I'd like to say that our prayers are with them, and we want to thank them immensely for trying to protect us all. About the first question was about the, could you run that by me again?
Yeah, the question is about, the impact it would have on the children, this closure, because it's indefinite. We don't know when the schools are going to be resumed for now. Yeah. So a prolonged school closure on the students, what will the immediate impact from an education standpoint be like or look like? The immediate impact will be in their education. There will be gaps because the closure is indefinite. I was listening to the Honorable Commissioner in Plateau State, and she gave like basically a timeline, a tentative timeline that there were 3 weeks to the end of term and they'll be opening in the middle of January. Even at that, revision period is part of schooling. And we don't know how long schools are going to be closed. So there will definitely be gaps in the education. And the problem now is, or the challenge is, how are we going to fill in those gaps? How are we going to close those gaps? So we're looking at gaps in their education. That's what we're looking at.
You talked about gaps. I'd like to know how severe is, the learning loss when children have to, stay out of school for weeks or months due to insecurity.
The problem about that is that the teachers will be under pressure. Certain central exams will have to be altered. So the Ministry of Education or the people in charge of the stakeholders in education will have a lot of work to do, more work than required, to make sure that things are done in a system. Now education is global. How are we going to make sure that we're at par with other people around the world? So with those gaps, it brings a lot of work, a lot of pressure on the children, a lot of pressure on the parents, and it's a little bit of chaos going on there from my experience when children have gaps. I mean, sometimes we have parents that take their children out for holiday or medical issues. We still have to cover those gaps. So the onus will now lie on the children, on the teachers, to make sure that those gaps are closed. And that's a lot of pressure. And when they don't pass, we blame the schools, we blame the teachers. Nobody remembers that the government had to do something and the schools were closed.
Right. Earlier I was asking the Honorable Commissioner for Education, for Jos, about, alternative learning systems. But the closures we've seen are also in areas that are far remote or far-flung or somewhat ungoverned, And so one has to ask about structured alternative learning systems, whether remote or community-based, that can support students, during school shutdowns, and giving the peculiar cases with these children, right? We know that it's up north, so there has to be mother tongue going on in there. There's also issues, cultural values as well. So how would that alternative look like, Ijeoma?
The alternative for schooling remotely lies on a lot of things. It lies on power. It lies on expertise. It lies on availability of appliances. And we're looking at this insecurity in certain volatile areas where there has been a lot of insecurity. I don't know whether the government has put in fully. Yes, they are talking about remote classes, remote learning, but we have the internet to deal with. And with the internet, we have power issues. So yes, in private schools, it might work. But what about these unity schools? Are the children just going to sit at home, or are they going to give them a pile of homework to do and then return when the school finally opens? If you're going to do TV programs that are educational for the children, how many people have access to television? How many people have access to power? So there's so much that all the stakeholders in the education sector need to sit down and need to look at. And I think private schools that are thriving with remote learning should step in here. They need to step in and partner with the government, partner with public schools, so that the education of these children, the gap will not be as wide as it is. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot to do remote learning.
I hear you on that, Ijeoma, when you say it's a whole lot to actually go about the whole remote learning. But we know for a fact that a lot of parents can't even, aside from the power issue, which of course the government should handle, a lot of parents cannot afford some digital devices or even internet access. So what should we do? Because if you say you look at the private schools, they look like they have it better, but we have more government schools than private schools. So the question I'm asking is, in the Nigerian context, how can remote learning be inclusive?
The thing about it is that it boils down to security. We can't actually have our children out of school. We can't have that. Security must be put in place, and measures should be made for people who do this, who abduct children. What penalties are there for people that have abducted all these children? We're not supposed to be negotiating with people that take away our children. There's supposed to be something in place to show them that, look, our government is serious about this. Our government is not going to tolerate this, so that our children stay in school and they are secure. Because all we're working on is speculation now. By the time you think about how many children have disappeared, it's like 1,000 children, 1,000 Nigerian children of our future are nowhere to be found. Security is the utmost, that is the only thing that can solve this problem. The children must be secure in their schools. Many people send their children to boarding houses because they know that they'll be secure. Now you're thinking of leaving your child as a day student, but there are certain rudiments of education and learning and maturity that takes place in these schools, especially when they created unity schools. You are all products of unity schools. You know what you have benefited from there. So the onus lies on the government to secure our children wherever they school.
Now, beyond academics, right, one has to also look at, the children, because a lot of people are thinking about this from an education point of view. There's also the social part of it, where, there's extracurricular classes, there's activities that is going on in the school. There's also where they're learning, socially. But there's also the emotional toll that goes with it as well. These gaps can affect them emotionally. So let's look at it, both from the emotional part as well as the social arm. Beyond academics, this prolonged time out of school, what would the effect be like on the students emotionally and socially?
When you leave children idle, they get up to no good. And having them out of school and at home, there's so much pressure on parents. They need to go to work. What are these children going to be up to? Schools provide you that extracurricular activity where your energy will be generated. Now, these children are back home. They are in the way, basically. I mean, in inverted commas, I'm saying that. There has to be a structure placed at home. Parents are under a lot of pressure. For example, even if you're doing judo classes for your children, let's say, or some home economics thing that they do in school for extracurricular activities, how is it possible for you as a parent, you're going to work, you're coming back, you're doing all that? The thing about it is that children's concentration span now, especially the younger children now, is very low. So the children, you have children getting into all sorts because they're redundant. They're not doing anything. In school, they have a structure. Now, if you are a religious person, you can put them, I think maybe churches or mosques should form clubs where the children can go to and do something while they're at home. Or you as a parent have to make the extra effort to give them that social balance. If not, they'll get up to no good. And now that everything is so internet oriented for those that can afford it, the parents need to really check what these children are looking at as well. So now everybody's going to be on their toes. Children will be on their toes. Parents will be on their toes. Churches, mosques will be on their toes. And the school teachers are waiting for these children to come back to fill in the gaps. So it's a bit of chaos going on right now.
Now, we're hopeful, honestly. I think that's what we have to do right now when it comes to looking at what the government can do for us. Because you said it earlier that right now, with the way things are going, the government has to fix, the insecurity issues in our schools. Because right now, we really can't afford, remote learning just like that yet. But then again, I'd like to know, hopefully, if things come back to what it should be and the schools resume, what interventions would you recommend to support children once schools eventually open?
Like we teachers always do, once you come back and there's a gap, maybe a child went for medical treatment or hasn't been in school for a certain period of time, booster classes. There need to be booster classes. Booster classes, extra lessons after school. They must be infused into the curriculum. Certain things that can be dropped should be dropped and academics should be faced. So booster classes is just the answer when children come back to school, and make sure that the teachers cover those gaps. The onus always lies on the teacher. I salute all the teachers out there, plus me, and you need to just do those booster classes to cover the gaps. And the children too, they need to cooperate with us. They really need to cooperate with us. They need to cooperate with their parents, and they need to cooperate with their teachers and the school administration, so that when they come back to school, they hit the ground running. There'll be no time for laziness, no time for fuffing around or anything, so that we actually get this thing going.
I must say thank you for taking out the time to join us, Ijeoma. Thank you for your insights and for coming on to the program this morning. Ijeoma is an education consultant, giving us a bit of insight as schools, government and unity schools are closing across the north due to insecurity. We talked about the prolonged gaps and what it would mean for the academic year, emotionally, socially, and what alternatives will look like at this time. Ijeoma, once again, thank you.